replacing the existing weighbridge at Kimbriki Resource Recovery Centre in one day. Kimbriki Resource Recovery Centre, also known as Kimbriki Tip, which is situated in a valley at Terrey Hills on the northern beaches of Sydney. From the 1st of July, all commercial loads must be weighed when entering Kimbriki Tip on Weighbridge 1, and when they exit they must weigh their trucks on Weighbridge 2. Kimbriki Tip needed to replace the old No. 2 weighbridge without interfering with the tip's operations. The weighbridge is cut into a valley, so access is difficult. The new weighbridge will have a concrete deck, which means it needs to be cured for 30 days to reach a minimum strength of 32 MPa before it can be used, as in accordance with Australian Standards AS360. Kimbriki Tip could not afford to have the second weighbridge out of action for more than 30 days while it waited for the concrete to cure. To reduce the Kimbriki Tip downtime, AWE built the weighbridge on site but in another location. Kimbriki Tip's operations would not be hindered while the concrete deck cured. AWE is installing a 20 metre long by 3.5 wide freight weight above ground weighbridge at Kimbriki Tip. The weighbridge will be built in two sections, each weighing over 30 tonnes. The freight weight weighbridge is built to last, with its 600mm steel U-beams modular structure frame designed to minimise bending and reduce extreme flexing when loaded. There's cross-bracing every 5 metres to prevent twisting. AWE galvanises all steel frames and its components to protect your weighbridge from corrosion. Once the weighbridge steel frame has been assembled, it's ready for the concrete. Then the concrete has to cure for 30 days on site, but in another location. So the goal was to remove the old weighbridge and replace it with the freight weight weighbridge in one day, and these are the steps that are taken. Decommission the old weighbridge. An oxy welder was used to cut off the old brackets and bolts. With each section weighing over 30 tonnes, a crane was needed to lift the weighbridge decks. Lifting the weighbridge decks is a time-consuming exercise, as the crane had to lower the stabilisers, adjust the ballast every time it lifted a section. The crane had to set up and reset 7 times over the course of the day, taking about 20 minutes each time. It's important to make sure the crane's foundations were secure when lifting a 30-tonne section on the steep slope, so that the crane does not topple over while lifting the 30-tonne sections. The truck drivers found reversing up the steep hill a challenge. They needed to position themselves under the crane so the old weighbridge deck could be lowered onto the trucks. The crane needs to secure the old weighbridge decks with chains so it can be safely lifted onto the trucks. The crane takes the load and pulls the weighbridge off its footings. The crane lifts the deck and lowers it onto the truck. The weighbridge needs to be chained down on the truck so it does not slide forward as it goes down the hill. The concrete deck will be transported to the recycling centre at the bottom of the hill. While the crane is repositioning for the next lift, the guys start clearing the concrete slab so the new weighbridge can be installed. There can't be any debris under the bridge, as this can affect the accuracy of the weighbridge. Lifting the second deck proves to be a bit tricky, as the crane operator has to make sure they don't knock down the building next to the weighbridge. Once the weighbridge deck has been manoeuvred around the hut, it's ready to be loaded onto the waiting truck. The cranes are not finished yet, because now it has to be moved again to the recycling centre to dump the old decks. The crane has to set up again. This time it's to pick up the new freight weight above ground decks, which have been curing for 30 days. The crane operators are getting good at positioning and setting up the crane to lift the new freight weight weighbridge. That's the 4th setup, and it's only taken 19 minutes. The crane needs to use a spreader bar so the crane can lift the deck without damaging it. The spreader bar makes the load more stable and easy to lower the deck in the right position at the top of the hill. The crane picks up the concrete decks, lifting the suspended weighbridge decks onto the reversing trucks. The deck is then lowered onto the truck and chained down for the climb up the steep hill. Back up the hill, the weighbridge team are preparing the load cells. The crane is repositioned for the 6th time to set up and pick up the second weighbridge deck. It's like Groundhog Day, as the crane has to be repositioned again to lift the weighbridge. Slowly the trucks reverse up the hill, inching up the steep slope. The 30 tonnes of weighbridge is certainly testing the driver's skills. You can smell the gears and brakes working overtime to conquer this mountain. Eventually the trucks make it up to the top is now ready for the crane to lift the new weighbridge. The weighbridge foundations have been cleared, so now they can chock up the weighbridge deck with blocks of wood to take the load until the deck is in position. The crane picks up the new weighbridge. It is then fitted with load cell travel spaces, which acts as a template guide for locating the load cells. The 30-tonne weighbridge deck dangles from the crane as they try to negotiate the tight space between the weighbridge pad and the hut. The deck swings as they attempt to squeeze the 10 metre by 3.5 metre steel frame concrete slab into its tight gap. After several attempts, they have to readjust the spreader bar so they can squeeze the bridge into position without knocking the hut over. The weighbridge deck is lowered into position on blocks of wood and the load cell travel spaces. These take the load of the bridge so it can be jacked into position. The crane suspends the bridge deck as it hovers over the mounts. Using hydraulic jacks and pry bars, the bridge is inched into position. The crane operator must be getting bored because this is the 7th time you've had to move and reset the crane to lift the second section. The crane picks up the second weighbridge and swings it into the opening, taking the load while it's lowered into position. The bridge sections are aligned and bolted together. The deck is then mounted to a head wall so it's true. With the aid of hydraulic jacks, the bridge deck is adjusted and moved so the load cell travel spaces can be removed and the load cells can be fitted. Since this has old foundations, the load cells have to be retrofitted onto the old mounts. Now the load cells are in location. They can be wired to the junction box and back to the indicators. So now the weighbridge operators can see the truck's weight and calculate the fee to be charged. The new 20 metre by 3.5 freight weight weighbridge was installed in only one day. The weighbridge was calibrated the next day and was ready to start collecting money by 10 o'clock a.m. the next morning.
To make sure that this solution is right for you, why not talk to an AWE group engineer today on 1300 044 044 or go to the web at www.awe.com.au.